Hi, my name is Shani Bannister. I am the graphic design intern at Cadron, and this is the third webinar entitled The Design Essentials. This is a tutorial webinar, so we will go through the ways to use Canva, basically. So the breakdown of today's session is there's an introduction to Canva, then we will go through the interface, and then we will talk about the design possibilities with Canva. So, just so you know what Canva is an online platform. It's geared towards making graphic design easy to use for anyone. It doesn't matter how capable you are in terms of technology and things like that. It's really easy to use. There are a lot of templates generated for a lot of communication purposes. So it's a great online tool and it's free. So it's something that we're trying to encourage everyone from the NSs, projects, programs to really incorporate into presentations, social media posts, etc. So I'll run you through a little bit of the interface just so you can get an idea of how things work before we transfer ourselves to the platform. So we'll talk about the templates. Um, there are different tabs, so that's what I have represented here. So the interface, you'll see a tab that says templates, and those are numerous templates, mostly for free, that you can choose, just depending on the theme or thematic area. Um, those are the templates that Canva has generated for you. Additionally, um, we'll go into elements. So another part of the interface is the elements. So this gives you icons, shapes, um, widgets, anything kind of fun that you can add to your design. As we go further, you'll see the upload section, and depending on your skills and capabilities, you can then upload icons to use within the template. The next item of the interface is the text. So that's pretty self-explanatory, but the text basically is a breakdown of headings, subheadings, the body of the text. That's where you're able to go in, change the colors, the fonts, the sizes. That's what that helps you do. And there are templates generated within that tab of text that's pre-laid out. So, sometimes you might not know how to center something, align it right, figure it out, where's best to place things. There are templates there to support that. The next item is the background. So the background tab is, as it states, the backgrounds. So these are the backgrounds that you can use within your design that will show you, you'll see a lot of different options there. You'll see leaves, wood, bricks, flowers, and when we get to the upload section, then you'll also see how you can incorporate things that you download yourself, images that you take, and how you can use those as backgrounds as well. You're not limited to the backgrounds within that tab. So the upload section, which is kind of my favorite section. So because of some of the other tools that I use in the Adobe suite, I'm usually able to generate icons and images that I can then use on the Canva platform. It's really helpful with presentations, um, just giving things a personalized feel. And that's sometimes very important, especially in the Caribbean. We don't really have enough representation. Sometimes it's important that we generate things and then bring them onto this platform. And I find that that's what the uploads helps me do. So the folders and more, that's kind of something that you can explore on your own, because I would just say that those two options, they're not. There's nothing really there that adds to your design. They're not the most helpful of tools, so there's no real need to get into that. You really need to focus on the tabs that are labeled templates, elements, text, background, and uploads. Those are the things that really enhance your design and communications. So, what can you do in Canva? Pretty much anything that you want to do. But I've just broken down some of the important ones because these are some of the things that we'll use more than likely um, in our IFRC post and the things that we want to do. So press kits, electronic press kits, concept notes, that's kind of linked in there. Those are things that you can generate. Social media posts, depending on your projects and programs, it's really good to have the capability to do that. It's fast and it's easy. Certificates for training, those are always really good. Presentations, much like the one you're looking at, we can do that on Canva as well. Invitations, save the dates, things like that. Collages, flyers, posters, infographics, iconography, and really like anything. Anything you think of, you can do on Canva. So now that we are here, we have basically gone through the interface to some extent and the things that you can generate on Canva. What I'm going to do is share a link within the chat, and that's going to take us to a Canva template. We'll all be looking at the same thing. And through that template, we're going to just go through those tabs, ways to personalize your design. And you can ask me questions as we go, anything that you want to know how to do on Canva, anything you want to add, but also it's a chance for you to explore your creativity, because it's important that we don't try to standardize creativity, but maybe just standardize best practices and best approaches towards visual communications. So I will send you all that link now. Give me the link is now in the chat feature, and everyone should be able to see it. And from that link, we're going to go into Canva now. I will share my screen, and we will go through some elements of Canva. Okay, great. I think everyone should be able to see the same thing. Please let me know if you can see my screen. We should all be looking at the Canva interface, and we should be looking at the World AIDS Day post, which I shared with you all. So let's get into it, because this is the fun part, I think, for me at least. So as you can see, everything's very red, which is usually how the IFRC goes. But as you can see here, if we were to highlight the text, We could change the font if, let's say, we didn't like that font and we wanted something that was maybe a serif font. We could go and we could choose that. And as we go through these things, you're going to see how different fonts, different colors really impact the feel that you get from the post. And that's an important thing to note because it has everything to do with how you engage with persons. Um, Give me 1 second. Let's just see what's happening technically for some participants. Um, let's just see if we can share the link again. And please let me know if you can access the link provided. So now we will just give everyone a second to make sure we're all on the same page. And feel free to mess around on your end with the font, with the colors, and just see if you understand what I mean when I say changing certain things really starts to impact the way the design makes you feel. Okay, so I think we're good to go. So we've changed the font. Um, as we can see, this is a pretty plain design. So maybe we want to go into our backgrounds tab and maybe we're feeling for some leaves. I don't know why, but maybe that's what today is about. So we can click the leaves, and as you can see, the borders surrounding the main, basically the focal point of the screen is now filled with leaves because that's the background that we would have selected. And you can go through the different backgrounds and just see how they change the look. And maybe the square is too big and you're not getting enough of the background. So then you can kind of change the square a little bit, make it smaller, um, try to recenter it. You'll see some lines come up usually when you're moving things, and these let you know when you're at the center of your canvas, as they would call it, or your artboard. This will let you know, okay, so where I am right now is a good place for this square because I am in the center of the screen. Or maybe you want to go to the left or the right. It's up to you. What helps your design, basically. So we've made the square a little smaller. And maybe you're not feeling the white or you just want to play around with that. You can change the color by, once you select the item, you can go to the square and when you hover it, you'll see color. And when you click it, you'll see a list of options. And from these options, you can still explore more options by clicking the plus sign. And as you go through and you sift through these color options, you can choose another color. Now, when you choose a color, and this is an important thing to note, you'll see a code. Now, it has the number sign, and it's followed usually by digits and letters. Now, this code is the code for the color. And you can, when you generate a color that you like, you can note that code because depending on the software that you're using, you can then go into the Adobe suite, use this code, and have that color consistently within your palette. And it works the same here on Canva. As you generate colors, they're added to your queue. So you're able to choose them again and again for any project that you start working on. So I'm going to try to find a purple. I think I like this purple. And as you see, the color code there is number sign 8B2D8F. That's, generate your own colors, but that's the color that I've chosen. Yeah, that's the color that I've chosen. And your color code is up to you. It's whatever you want, whatever works for the design, but it is important to note the color code. It's important to note that code that's generated because that can be helpful for future products. When you're branding things, when you have your projects and you have a logo and there's specific colors, it's really good to know that color code so that you're always on the beat and on the marker with those colors. So I've chosen that purple, but I just feel like the square is a little too much. So I might want to go here to the transparency section and just lower the opacity a little bit because maybe it's a little too intense for me. And just work around with different options. You can go from 0 to 100. So that's actually funny. You can go from 0 to 100, and you can choose options like 77, 76, whichever opacity works for you. And now, based on the color option that I've chosen, the red in the text no longer looks good. Like, it's not working at all. So now we're looking at things that we would have mentioned in our previous webinar, which is the aesthetic. So visually, this is very complex for the eyes. The red is just too much. So from here, we can maybe select, I'm thinking a white will look good. So we'll highlight our fonts and we'll just change everything to white. And you don't have to do that either. You can generate a differentiation between your headers and what we would call the body text. So if we wanted to put World AIDS Day in a different font color, we could do that because maybe we want to generate that differentiation between that and the body text, which is in white right now. So I've changed that main text to a light gray, and the body text is in white. Now from here, maybe I don't like the spacing. I feel like there's too many spacing between World AIDS and Day 2017. I feel like that separation is a little large. So I can click the spacing option, and I can look at the letter spacing, which is how spaced out each letter is from each other, or I can look at the line height, which is how each line is interacting with one another. So there's a very large gap for me personally, so I may want to reduce this. So I will click the line height, and I will begin to generate that reduction between those lines, and then you see the difference. So oftentimes I find with headings, it's good to play around with that line height because you don't want your headings to feel paragraph-like. Like you don't want it to be like a whole inch between the headings sometimes. It's the things are meant to be together, but just maybe based on the sizing and the font choice, they have to be on separate lines, but you still want to show that there's a cohesion between these two statements. So oftentimes you play around with the line height so that they still look put together. So from here, we can test out some different things. as you can see, there's something almost like a droplet, and that is a symbol for blood. In this particular case, I'm getting tested with reference to World AIDS Day, but maybe the white isn't working for me anymore. So I can go here again and I select add because maybe there's not a color there that works for me. And I can go, let's say light pink. And I select that light pink. And from there, you see, we've changed kind of the dynamic, but now we're working with three colors. And this, again, is another important thing to know. Don't overpower your designs. Try not to go with more than two fonts. That's my rule, my personal rule. No more than two fonts when I'm designing something. Put the heading in something and the body in something else, or use a font with different typefaces, a bold, then a regular, and then a light. And usually that really keeps the cohesion with the document. There's nothing worse than reading a sans serif and then suddenly a paragraph in, you're on a serif font. It's not good for the viewer. It breaks that attention grabbing that you need, especially when we're dealing with Word documents or anything that anyone has to read. You really want to make sure that you take into consideration who the audience is, how much focus they have, because trust, younger people do not have as much focus as an older demographic possibly. So you have to take all those things into consideration, especially with social media posts. You want to be very careful with how much text you use. There's no point in generating a social media post. Your heading is great, it's simple, and then there are two paragraphs under that heading. It is too much for anyone. It's not engaging, it's not helping, and at the end of the day, this is a communication output and you have not communicated with anyone. No information was received. So from here, I am going to look at uploads. So we went through text. We can actually maybe go to elements because this square that I made purple is an element. It's one of the shapes that you see here in this section. So this is where you can get things like this. You can get any shape that you want. You could get charts, lines, illustrations. There are a lot of options, so feel free to explore those. And that's the important part of the graphic design process. It's really to explore what works. And what works to one person may not work to another, but it's always important to try to find that in between where you can kind of pacify everyone and your design is aesthetically pleasing. So from here, we'll go into our uploads. Now, my uploads are going to look a lot different from yours because these are the things that I have personally uploaded to my Canva platform. Now, you can go on the internet, you can download a picture that you like, you can use a whole set of other platforms, and through these images, you can upload them, you can use them as backgrounds, you can use them however you like and however it benefits the design. So I generate a lot of icons. That's kind of my thing. So I use iconography a lot to break down information, to kind of break up the monotony. So in my uploads, you'll see icons. So if I click an icon from the uploads, you'll see that it's added to the canvas, to the artboard. Now, this is way too big based on the design, so I might want to make it smaller. And to do that, I click the circle. Any circle works because, okay, so let me explain this. The circles on the corners change the size, the overall size of an object. The lines on the top or the left and right, they squeeze the object whichever way you choose to go. Now, in design, this is usually called bastardizing an object, but that term is usually pretty strong. But just squeezing it up. And you can really, like, if you look at posters pretty much anywhere, you can see people who do that. Suddenly, like, the object is smushed. And this is not a best practice when you're thinking of design. It actually communicates that you've kind of lost that credibility as a designer, because no one's going to believe that you're good at what you do if your outputs have images that are squished, images that are pixelated. Those are the things to look out for. You also don't want to be generating iconography that does not have anything to do with the words being used. So this icon here shows a linkage of people, and let's say maybe that could work. My text might need to be different. Come together, World AIDS Day, something like that. So that icon now generates that definition of togetherness. But all of that is very important to consider when we're designing. What are we trying to communicate and how are we going about it? Icons don't work for everything. You can't just throw in an icon and be like, oh, this is great. The monotony is gone. You can actually generate more confusion if you're not using the right icons or not using them at the right time. So, are there any questions? Is what I'm going to ask right now. I think we've gone through all the panels and the subsections of the interface. So feel free to ask me anything. I am going to check the chat now just to see if there are any questions that you guys have about the Canva platform and interface. Okay, so everyone's rushing to ask questions, and that's great. Thanks. So basically, what's going to happen from here through these webinars is we're hoping to identify persons within the NSs, within their groups, projects, programs that can use these skills that you've learned or skills that you may have had before to generate these materials, these graphic design materials, to help better the communications processes. So,
Hi, Shani.
hi, Arlene.
Hi, I was wondering, I left a question just asking, you went through using different colors and how it could generate a code, like a color code.
Right.
But, within the IFR CNO guidelines, we have specific codes to use for different palette, like color palettes. So how do you input a specific code that you have already? Or do you just click the color code until you find the one you look for, you
Okay,
need?
so that's a great question. So, see here, I have a blue, and there's a code that's been generated. So, I'll do the usual copy and paste, and I'll copy that code. So, let me change the square to, let's say, purple. We'll go back to purple. When I click this plus sign that I would have used to search through to find a color, I click it. In the space that generates codes, I copy and paste the code that I have, and I just click enter. So now basically that color code, any color code that you have, you put into that box and it generates the color for you.
Okay, that's cool. Thanks.
No
I have
problem.
another question though.
Okay.
Um, because you discussed different templates in the template tab,
Hmm.
and you were saying that it's basically up to the person creating the artwork to choose whatever template works for them.
Hmm.
But is there like a guide on sizes? Because I would notice that sometimes you're creating something based on a template that's probably for Facebook, but then you realize you really wanted to use this for maybe a poster.
Okay.
Is it possible to change it back to like the poster size, or do you have to have all that information in your mind before you actually design?
Okay. So with Canva, usually you choose based on subsection. So I might choose social media post, and all of those templates generated under that social media post tab will usually be 600 by 600, which is the standard square size. Now, if I want posters, I'd have to go back out and figure out, well, and choose templates for posters and so on and so on. It's always good to know your sizes because you can actually, after maybe generate something that you like, you talk to a printer, you find out, okay, well, this actually needs to be 300 by 300. You can go in and resize that document, make it smaller, and just change that template. But for Canva, which is the worst part about the free Canva, is you often can't go back after you've started a design and resize. So it's usually good to know what you're doing when you begin because it's very hard on the free version to refer back to anything.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Okay, anybody else have some questions? Thank you, Arlene, for your question. So basically, the next session will be led by the Senior Communications Officer in Trinidad, Tiffany Richards. And that session and webinar will engage you guys about communication practices for the different tools that you may choose in Canva, whether it be a press release, a social media post, a Facebook banner. And that is going to be really important in generating that final output, knowing your key messages, knowing your target audience, and things like that. So, Tiffany will touch base on that next session. So, if there are no further questions for this session, we are going to bring it to a close today. But
I
please,
have one more question before you go, Shani. Sorry.
no problem.
Because you were actually talking about icons and how we could upload them, right? What's the best site you might refer us to get these type of icons? Or maybe you could advise, because sometimes you download images from Google or some other place, and there's background um, colors behind the icons. So how do you maneuver that? Like, how do you maneuver and get an icon that you could actually use on one of these designs?
Okay, that's actually a great question. So, usually when you want an icon, you might say icon for traffic, but you should always type PNG at the end of that icon search on Google. I can't really refer a site because sometimes you just kind of stumble on one. Most icon sites you do tend to have to pay for, but there's some free ones out there. But in the case where you're just looking for an icon on Google, always type in PNG. And the way to know if an image is a PNG before you waste your time downloading it is when you click it and it shows up in that Google Chrome image, basically image view, you'll see white and gray squares behind the object. And this is how you know it's a PNG. And it,
Oh yeah, I've seen that before.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, in cases where you download something that is actually a JPEG pretending to be a PNG, which is when you have a background color, Canva doesn't really manipulate things like that. But the software I use in Adobe, you can usually go in and do an image trace, which allows you to take out that background and use the icon only as a PNG. But it's not something that Canva can do. So it's best to upload PNGs, or feel free to ask me for support on things like that, because based on the software I use, I can usually take out the background.
Okay, thanks. That was helpful.
No problem. Um, Anyone else have any questions, or maybe you know something that I don't know about Canva, which is very possible. Feel free to share for the benefit of everyone listening.
I think this is something you know, Shani, but maybe it wasn't mentioned. I don't think you went through the whole share button part where like you could probably share a design that you're working on so that a colleague could actually input something on it as
Right.
well. So it could be like a joint collaboration.
Yeah. Right. Thank you. That's yeah. Thank you. So on the Canva platform, which is great because IFRC is so collaborative, there's a share option, and you can click share, and you can type in the email address of the person you want to work with, and you can invite multiple people. Now, if it's a case where, let's say, you've designed something, you don't know the person's email address, there's an option here that says copy link, and you can take that link and put it into your email and send off that link to the person, respectively. Um, and this really helps for things like webinars, for presentations, so that people aren't designing something in point A to transfer to point B, but that we're all on the same platform, and that really helps. And while we're on the share option, we also could look at the download option. So there isn't a particular need on Canva to continually click save. It saves in the background. But if you want, you can click file and save. And it usually say on the heading here, on the header, all changes saved. That means that everything you've done thus far has been saved. So when you go to download, now this is the interesting part of Canva that's not really the greatest part of Canva. But when you go to download, you'll see different file types. So you'll see a PNG. PNGs are usually high quality images, as stated here. But I don't always recommend PNGs unless you are dealing with a vector. And vectors are usually those overlayable images and icons. When you're dealing with JPEGs, which is usually what I would use for a social media post, that's another option here. There's PDF standard and PDF print. Now, the difference. PDF standard, it gives you a file that is pretty compressed. It's small, it's supposed to be easy to share. If you want to put it on your flash drive, it's definitely not going to be gigs of storage, nothing like that. Easy to share through email. But PDF print generates a PDF that is of high quality so that if you were to print it, your text is crisp, the images look good, things like that. No,
Okay, so if oh, sorry.
continue.
So if you were doing something like a banner stand, like artwork for a banner stand, you would use PDF print?
If I were doing something like a banner stand, I would use PDF print. This is what
Okay.
most printers would want to get from you, because it really does help with the text, especially let's say you have body text, which is usually the smaller text. It helps it to be clear. There is in the paid option, you can do an animation, which is an MP4 or a GIF or a GIF. I don't want to debate on the pronunciation of that. but that is usually with the paid option of Canva, which is something you can look into, but the free option really does give you, I think, enough to get day-to-day tasks done. So from here, we could download, and that download will save to your computer, and you'll have that file if you want to send it to a printer, send it to another work colleague, whatever the case is. But it's also important to note when you are scrolling through templates that you are selecting free templates. If you select a template that is not free, I'm going to try to do that now. And as you can see, it's very hard to find one that's not free, but it does happen. But let me just explain that to you. If you select a template that is not free and you go to download, it will tell you how much you owe Canva to receive that download. And usually you can't get the download, or you will get the download with a watermark, and no one wants that. So National Donut Day is actually a premium template. So as you see here, when I go to click download, it says pay and download or download a watermark draft. So before you get too deep into your design, always be sure that you have chosen a free template, because you don't want to come at the end and find out that you have to pay for it. Because in most cases, we can't do that, and it was just a lot of time and energy spent to no avail. So that's important to know. Also, as you'll see here, there's an undo option if you do something that you don't want to do. And you can go back. And as you can see, as I undid, it took me back to my World AIDS Day post. Are there any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. Um, I think what we've covered is very basic, but Canva is one of those tools that's so easy to use. You can go in and explore, and exploring is the biggest part of creativity. So look at the different templates. See how you can utilize aspects of one template into another just to make a really good design. And always ask yourself, what am I trying to communicate? I really want to thank you guys for listening. This webinar will be posted on YouTube later this evening, and the link will be sent out to everyone. Thank you so much, and we will see you guys next Monday for the communications webinar, which will be led by Tiffany. Thank you all, and till next week.